permission, if you don't mind. And anybody who is interested in it, I'll be happy to share that later on. The summary of this presentation I'll be putting up on the Facebook page and through emails as well. So that's about how the session is going to be working. So now let me take a moment to introduce ChaiPay.org. Basically, the idea here is to learn from the best-in-class companies what their best practices are. And oftentimes, you're able to find this information in the public domain, but really, it's tough for us to fathom if we can just copy and paste those practices, because what went behind the scenes is something we are not privy to. And based on our very own organizations, we know how challenging introducing new initiatives can be. So the intent of ChaiPay.org is to also delve behind the scenes work, and we will be asking some questions from Gwen, and so can you, in terms of really what was behind introducing those practices that she would be sharing with us shortly. The idea is also to know about the kind of impact these practices have made. And the reasons I think it's important is because, you know, we many times introduce great practices, but we do not track them, or we are not able to measure the impact of the same. So that's another thing we want to be cognizant of and we want to have a takeaway from. And then the final fourth bullet point that you see here is about the future state. You know, women leadership is a journey. We, you know, start with something, but we have to keep evolving as the situations in our organizations keep getting complex. So would love to know what organizations are focusing on in terms of the future state. So these are some of the highlights that ChaiPay.org tries to cover. I'm sure there are many other fantastic things that we'll be hearing today and in the future as well. So with that, I would like to introduce Gwen Ryan. Had pleasure to meet Gwen a couple of years ago and have been keeping in touch with her and bothering her for this and that. So Gwen, thank you for taking the time to be here. Truly appreciate it again.
Thank you. I'm glad to be asked.
Thank you. Thank you. So just a very quick introduction. Gwen is the Director of Tax Services in the Global Talent Hub at EY, and she has been based in Bangalore for the last, I think, 3 years now, Gwen, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, this June it was my 3rd year.
Yes. So it's truly a pleasure to have you as a sounding board, Gwen, and as, of course, our first one to kick off the ChaiPay.org. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So
okay. So, oh, I'm sorry. Are you ready?
I'm just getting to your slide. Go ahead.
Okay. So first, let me just tell you a little bit about EY, and then this is the information on our global firm, and it also is as of June of last year. Our fiscal year is June 30th, and we will have our numbers any minute now for the end of our fiscal year, but we don't have them published yet. So I did just pull off the fiscal 14 year numbers. So globally, we have 190,000 people. We just had our global diversity leader in the office here this week, and she shared that we have over 100,000 women across the globe. Our revenues last year were 27 plus billion, and we have offices everywhere, basically. Americas, Europe, Middle East, India, Africa, Japan, Oceania. We're expanding into many, many different markets. There's about 700 offices in about 150 countries. And that too keeps growing. What we do, we're professional services, so therefore we provide assurance, advisory, tax, and then transaction advisory services. I am part of the tax practice, and I am part of what we call our global delivery network here in India. So when you look at EY people in India, there's two basic groups. One is our EY India practice, which is our office that provides Indian tax assurance advisory and transaction advisory services. And then there's our group, which is the Global Delivery Network, which is a team of people that is providing those same services, but to the global EY world. And so we are about 15,000 people now in total, and we're working with country practices in every location that we have. I'm the leader of the tax practice, as I said, and so tax has about 4,000 people in India, and we've been in operation in India for 14 years. So I'm responsible for the growth of this practice, for developing the people to meet the growth, and working with our global leaders to decide what services we want to bring to our team here. We are not considered a back office. We are producing what I like to call full-fledged tax professionals here. And in many cases, entire engagements can be run by the team here. It's not a situation where we only do part of the work and then send it back all of the time. We actually have gotten to the point in the 14 years that we can do all of the work on an engagement when we have those skills and competencies. Let me just share a little bit about my journey before we go into what EY does around diversity and inclusiveness. I have worked for the firm for 30 years. Most of that time was in the United States. I was a tax professional in the U.S. I had various different roles, and ultimately I was promoted to partner in the United States. I then took on a role for about 4 years as a partner in charge of tax people for the Americas. And in that case, I was working mostly with the U.S., but we also covered Canada and Latin America. After that, I became our business tax compliance leader for the Americas, and I got some additional experience working with Latin America, but I also had a role working with India from the US, and so that was my first, even it was 14 years ago when the operation here started. I started working with our team here, but I have to admit I didn't really visit that often. Then finally, about 4 years ago, I raised my hand and asked for an adventure. And that's how I landed in Bangalore. It was a really big move for me personally to move to Bangalore, although at that point I was an empty nester. My children were grown and out of the house, so that was easy, but it did require that my husband pick himself up and move with me to the other side of the world. I think the thing I like to think that has made me fairly successful in the firm is the fact that we had an atmosphere where you can ask for things like a move or ask for things that you need so that you can be successful. One of those things I had asked for early in my life was a flexible work arrangement with reduced hours. And that was because I was a mother of 2 daughters, and yet I was working. So the flexible work arrangement lasted for 8 years and was really a wonderful experience. When I think back to those days, right, I used to think that there was no need for programs around diversity and inclusiveness because I just happened to be very lucky. We had a wonderful managing partner where I worked, and he was very supportive of us doing flexible work arrangements when they were brand new to the market. But having someone in that position who was a real champion really allowed the new concept of flexibility to work. So I have definitely benefited from programs that we now would include in our diversity and inclusiveness programs before it became vogue to even categorize them. The other thing that made it successful back then was the fact that there was a number of us, about 4 of us, who were all in that same period of life and all working on those flexible work arrangements in our practice. And so we, as people who were doing something that was new, working in a world where we were generally by ourselves as a lone female, we supported each other and helped each other and shared our stories and concerns together and came up with solutions. So we had a really great support network. Because of those experiences, as I moved through the ranks in the firm, I got very, very involved in our efforts around women and diversity and flexibility. And when I came to India, I wanted to continue that type of work, and so I've done that today. So what we're going to do next is we have just a short video that talks about the EY diversity strategy, and then I'll give you some highlights of what we do at EY here in India and what kind of success we've had with that. So roll the video.
Just getting there, Gwen.
Sure. I don't think I hear it.
You don't? Hold on.
No.
Can you hear it now?
No. It's just music, but...
Yeah, it's just music right now.
Yeah, I don't hear that.
Can others hear it? Can you see the screen, Gwen?
I see the screen, but I don't hear anything. I did when we tested it today.
Ritu, can you hear it?
No, I can't.
Okay, just give me a minute. Let me see.
Sure.
Okay, I'm going to restart it. Just give me a minute.
Sure.
Okay, tell me now.
Okay.
Gwen, can you hear it?
No.
Ritu, can you hear it?
No.
Yep.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Great.
Lovely.
Okay, so we'll go back to the slides, and what I was going to cover next is what we do for the overall GTH, as we call ourselves, Global Talent Hub. And then after I talk about our across service line efforts, then I'll go into my practice, the tax practice, and what, in addition to the, what we do across the service lines, what we in tax are also doing. So first, what are we doing in the entire organization here in India? If we go to the next slide, we have a series of myths and how we looked at them. So the first myth is that organizations lack male D&I champions. And I think in the early days of D&I, that probably was true. But what we did is we sought out advocates within our senior leadership team. And we actually had our male chief operating officer as the D&I sponsor. Next step we had was we consciously put together a diversity council comprising individuals with power, people who were at the actual leadership of the different sub-service lines that we have here, so that they could drive the D&I agenda through those service lines. We, like many companies, have D&I talent, but it's never enough. We have to get our business leaders involved in diversity because we can't just rely on the talent team to get that done. And frankly, we wouldn't be as successful as if the business leaders were not involved. And then lastly, we launched a sponsorship program for our high potential women, where we have identified women across our sub-service lines across India who we believe have the skills and the desire to reach our highest levels, and we are having them in our sponsorship program so that they actually find themselves being successful. Next slide. As a result, we have really set this tone at the top. Next slide, Anju.
Yeah, it's just coming up.
Okay, sorry. And, if you go back to my original story when we started about myself and my friends being very successful working on a flexible work arrangement for a significant number of years, our success was absolutely tied to the fact that the tone at the top was there to support us. And so we feel that is incredibly important. We find that these sponsorship programs where the male leaders themselves are responsible for the success of the women also has been very, very successful, making sure that the women have access to the influential male leaders in their practices, something that might not have happened naturally. When we force it a little bit, people find that they actually do have common ground, and they find that the women are much more likely to stay and be able to navigate the difficult road that they have as women working in a full-time role. And then we have leveraged the partnership between our businesses and our HR team and our D&I team. No one person can make this successful. It has to be teamwork. It has to be everyone involved in this so that we can be successful. Next slide, please. Myth number 2, that our organizations find it challenging to retain women post-maternity. And so what we did here is we said we're going to build an environment where women can thrive and succeed in the workplace by ensuring that we have the right policies to help them do so. we initiated one of my favorite things, a maternity coaching program for our expectant mothers. And it is, I really feel, a top-notch program. We get them together, sometime during their pre-leave period, and we have an outside coach come in and talk to them about what they're going to experience when they're home with a new baby for the first time. We bring in our leaders who have themselves, I've been asked to speak a number of times, talking to them about what we see as their ability to come back and be successful. And then we brought their peers in, people who have already figured it out, mothers who are back at work, and we have them understand what they went through, because no one feels it's easy. But we find that if we get to the women before they leave us, before they go home for their maternity, we find that they are coming back. So when I look at our rate of return, people coming back to us after maternity, it is very high. And I think this program is a big reason why they're successful. In addition, we have our Working Mothers Network, where we have the women themselves plan events and discussion groups and anything else they think that will help women who are now back at work, trying to deal with the challenges of work and motherhood. And so they're sharing their experiences, providing resources to one another, and we find that it is something that people really find helpful. We also have a flexible work arrangement policy. It's not as easy here as it was for me. When I was doing flexible work arrangements within the U.S., I had better access to internet at home and certain things that made it a little easier than here. We find that the internet outside of the office isn't necessarily able to handle many of the technologies that our people work within every day. But we work together with our women to see what they need, especially when they're coming back from maternity, to give them the flexibility that they need to be successful. We also, though, offer flexibility to all of our employees. We are very willing to work with our people to say, if they need to come in later or earlier and leave earlier, whatever flexibility they're looking to have. Maybe we can't provide it 100% of the time, but there are many parts of the year that we can work with them to have the flexibility that they might want. Another thing we pride ourselves on for many of our people, they are working on India time. They work with country teams that are all around the world, but what we say to our teams is we will work on India time. We'll stretch here and there. We expect you to stretch here and there. But day in and day out, our people will spend most of their time working within India time. And lastly, we have sessions where we help our male and female employees work better together. And those types of trainings and discussion forums have opened up communication, which generally is the way to success. And lastly, I'll mention we do have a creche system, and it is not for forever, but again, in that first year when people are coming back from maternity, they have the ability to bring their children to a creche facility, and that eases a mother's return back to the office. So Next slide. As a result of these practices, we have emerged as an employer of choice, and 45% of our women, 45%, I'm sorry, of our entire workforce is women. In my practice, it is 60% of our workforce is women, and we find that they are returning post-maternity. In fiscal 15, we had 162 out of 179 women return from maternity leave to work. That's a rate of 90%. About a year ago, I saw a survey, and I was looking through my office the other day trying to find the printout, but I have misplaced it. But it was a survey done on women in Asia, and it said less than 20% of women in India return to work after marriage and or children. And so we are incredibly proud of the fact that 90% of our women returned last year from maternity. And I think those programs, especially that maternity coaching program, was a real differentiator for us. We also track how many employees return to us. So we actually have very good retention here, but we do lose some people. And what we find is that people will leave us, and they'll often find that their new employment is not what they thought it would be, and they want to come back. And so we call them boomerangs, and we find that more women come back to us as boomerangs than men. And again, we think it's related to those family-friendly policies that we have. Myth number 3, organizations do not help women to reach the top. Women don't have the networks to get there. And so what we've done is we've produced those networks for the women to help showcase their abilities. We have special events that are for the women. We call it our Professional Women's Network. And one of them we like to highlight, our CEO, who we talked about before being our sponsor for D&I for us, Bharat. He is a man in India who loves to cook. And so we had a program that was for the Women's Network, Cooking with the CEO, where he showcased his cooking talents for everyone. But that was just one. We have something called the Women's Access Program, where we have pairings of women with mentors from senior leadership. And that's a voluntary program where we send out a survey every year. We ask people, 1, do they want to be a mentee? And then 2, we ask people, do they want to be a mentor? And then based on the areas that they work and their interests, we pair them, and they go through some training sessions to understand how to have a good relationship, a coaching relationship. And then we meet with them periodically to give them additional coaching to make sure that they are successful in those pairings. I can't say that we're 100% successful in this area. Sometimes we miss and the wrong people are paired together, but there are many stories out there where people developed long-term relationships. They continued them on beyond that year that the program itself is designed for, and they have helped each other, frankly, to grow and to be successful within the firm. And then we have various focus group discussions with leaders so that women have a little more time to interact and get some insights and experience. So here, what we found is the women are, in our surveys, are saying that mentoring for them has been a top career enabler. And our senior male leaders, again, have contributed to a culture of inclusion, which we're really excited about. So now, let me talk a little bit more about my practice and what I have done to help. So, as I said in the beginning, we're a practice of 4,000 people. We have about 60% women. So when you look at our campus hires, we have about 60% women because off campus, which is how we do most of our hiring, we are looking for degrees that give us a good population of women candidates. We hire people with BCom degrees, math and science degrees, and we're able to get many, many high quality students that way. What we're really proud about, though, is over the 14 years, we have been able to retain that gender percentage all through our ranks. And so where many companies can get them off campus, they find over time, though, when you look at the more senior ranks, the managers, the senior managers, the directors, they find that they then tend towards men. We in the tax practice here have been able to go through manager, through senior manager and director, and retain that 60% women percentage. And I will tell you, that is an incredible thing. I was, as I said, involved in the people in the United States. I will say we haven't done as well in the tax practice in the U.S., and so we're very, very proud of that here. Some of the things that we've done are more tactical in nature, and that's what I wanted to share today. The first one is our program called Share and Learn. And this was started 3 years ago when I first came to Bangalore. It was two of our managers came to me and said, we look at the people at our team lead level, and we feel like they need some additional coaching in the areas of gender, in the areas of dealing with tough situations, and so we'd like to start a program for them where we will pick a topic, and the two managers led this for the first year and a half, and then they handed it off to somebody else, but they would pick a topic. We would book a large conference room, which was first come, first serve. If you got there too late, there was no seat for you to stay. And they would probably they'd book it for an hour and a half. They'd spend a half hour with some slides and some content that they had either gotten through, the Ernst & Young network, or in certain topics, they got content off the internet. And then they would spend the next hour discussing that issue or topic amongst the table. When they came to me with this idea, I said, okay, I guess, I'll go along with it. I agreed to attend the session, but I wasn't honestly so sure that people were going to show up. They're busy. And it meant that they would still have to get their work done, but they were taking an hour and a half out of their week to get together and talk. And day number one, we had more than standing room only crowd. And every meeting after that, we did it on a quarterly basis, and we still do it today. Every meeting after that, we had an incredible amount of attendance, and people covered topics like work-life balance issues, how do you have difficult conversations with someone that is your counselee, how do you have difficult conversations with someone who is your counselor, so upward feedback, and all types of really good topics for our younger people who are getting into their first management role. There were many topics that were not necessarily D&I related, but about half of them were. And I think that was something that produced a lot of thought and growth for our team. The next thing we did was something that was more my idea, and that was have book discussion groups around the Lean In book by Sheryl Sandberg, the CEO of Facebook. And so let me just share with you how I got the book. I have very little time to read personally, and so when I do have time, I generally like to read my own type of book. And it's not going to be something that's going to particularly make me learn. I want it to be something that, you know, I can just relax and not think about work topics. But our talent leader, Ruchika, is a big reader for work-related topics, and she gave me a copy of the Lean book when it first came out. And so I took it home with me, and I said to my husband, oh, I've got to read this book because Ruchika gave it to me. I didn't want to. And so we were going on a trip to the U.S., and so I brought the book with me. The book had a lovely trip to the United States. It saw many different places and came back to India unread. Then about a week later, I had to go to Kerala for work, and I said again to my husband, darn it, I've got to read this book because Ruchika is going to ask me about it. And so I brought it with me to the airport. I started reading at that time, and it just sucked me right in. I read it on the plane, in the car to the hotel, from the office to the hotel, and frankly, I couldn't wait for the plane ride back so that I could finish it. It was a very, very quick read. For me, because I was in the United States and because there's a lot of programs in the U.S., and I was the people leader for tax, a lot of the stories in there were not particularly new, but it was a great refresher, and it's almost like a D&I handbook in my opinion. And so when I got back to the office here in Bangalore, I said to my team, I said, I'd love to buy a bunch of copies of this book and start a book club. And so we did. We handed them out to the women managers, and we had an invite to the book club, and you were not allowed in the door unless you had read the book. Now, at first, I was going to be very tough about it and not let anyone in if they hadn't finished the book, but I had to break down a little bit and say, well, if you got halfway through, you could come in. One story, for those of you who've read the book, that was really interesting in our first discussion was the chapter on success and likability, which I think is a very big issue here. When I meet with people, I always tell them that my first goal is not to be liked by everybody. My first goal is to have everybody say that I'm fair and I do the right thing. They may not like me for it, but I want them to say that. And so I'm a little bit tough, especially in Indian culture. And so the Heidi and Howard story, which is a chapter where they talk about a study that was done a number of years ago, where they took the profile of a very successful woman and they handed it out to men and women alike, and they said, please read this profile and tell us if you would like to work with this person. The only difference between the profile that they handed out was some had the name Heidi on it, the female name, and others had the name Howard on it, a male name, word for word the same. And so across the board, when they surveyed people, be they men or women, the majority of people said they would prefer to work with Howard and they didn't want to work for Heidi. So in our book club discussion of this, one of my senior managers who had gotten through that chapter shared with everyone. We had another leader here who's very similar to me, but he's a man. He's very direct like I am, and He has a lot of opinions like I do, and she had been asked by both of us to fill out a survey on us because we were going to the same developmental program where you needed 360 feedback. When she was filling out the survey on him, she was marking him positively for the same thing she was marking me as negative. And so it just brought to everyone the fact that, you know, it happens here, it happens everywhere, and we just have to know about it. We don't have to change necessarily, but we have to know about it so that we can deal with it honestly. After the first one of these sessions, I thought it went well, but what I really was disappointed in is that I didn't see the sharing of stories like I had expected. Again, going back to my introduction, when I was on that flexible work arrangement, it was my friends who were going through the same thing and us sharing our troubles and our solutions with each other that really helped us a lot. And I knew that there were many women here who had figured out how they could balance their family and their career and be successful, but they weren't sharing their stories with anyone. This also didn't make sense to me because I find, you know, the Indian culture to be so much more social than the U.S. culture, and to me, then sharing the story should have been easier, but it just wasn't. And so what we did in the second meeting of the book club was we planted people. We went to them ahead of time, women that I knew who had great stories and insights to share with their colleagues, and we asked them to do it. They were all uncomfortable, but we asked them to get uncomfortable and still do it, and they did, and they started opening up with one another, and I think that made a really big impact. People all over here in EY ask me about my story, but it's not really that relevant to them. What they need to do is understand how they can be successful here, and sharing with one another is really one of the best ways to get that done. The next thing we did was focus a bit on flexibility, and this is a hard topic for us. We work during busy seasons, long hours. People would like the flexibility to work at home sometimes, but we're also a very team-based culture, and our learning is based on mentorship from the person above you. So seniors mentoring staff, managers mentoring seniors, and so on and so forth. And so work at home for us doesn't work. The tools won't work on the internet. And so what we have done, though, is created a network of people who are giving us ideas of how we can be flexible as much as possible. A year and a half ago, if you looked at our organization, you would have seen that we had one time that everyone was supposed to be in, 9:30, and some of our managers were so strict about it that if you were, 2 minutes late, they expected that the person would have texted them to tell them that they were going to be 2 minutes late. The last thing we wanted were people on two-wheelers trying to text their manager just because they were going to be a little bit late. We initiated a survey, and we got everybody's opinions. What time did they want to start work? Was it 8 o'clock? 8:30, 9, 9:30, 10. I really expected that we would hear from everybody they wanted to start between 9:30 and 10. Much to our surprise, we found that over 60% of the respondents, and we had a lot, wanted to start between 8 and 8:30. And so we ended up saying that, one size doesn't have to fit all. And when you have 4,000 people, it's never going to fit all. And so what we did is institute a policy saying on a team-based level, people can decide as a team when they're going to come in and when they're going to leave. And the whole team doesn't necessarily have to come in at the same time. Depending on the way the work flows, you could have some members coming in early, some members coming in later. As long as the team can work it out and still get everything done and meet their needs, then any amount of flexibility in the plan is fine. We didn't want people to change every single day what they do, but it could be seasonal, it could be the whole year, whatever made sense, but they as a team would have the right to make those decisions. That was something that was very, very well received. The last topic I wanted to talk about is unconscious bias. I recently was at another organization talking about this topic, and it was us, it was Tata Communications and Google. All three of us were talking about our programs. The thing that struck me was how similar we all were in what we were doing. We all rolled out web-based learnings as our first plan of attack. And, you know, the web-based learning is very good, but it's really not, in my opinion, good enough. You get some flavor for what it is, but I know with all the young people that we have here, they figure out how they can quickly get through web-based learning, and even though they're going to have a test at the end, they seem to manage to do it, if they can, without learning that much. So our second wave of effort in this area is workshops. And here we just started this program where we have a 4-hour workshop where we introduce the topics, we introduce the concepts, and then we're working with an outside vendor who is a bunch of actors. And they have worked with us to create scenarios that are tied exactly to the teams that we have, the issues that we see, the work that we do. And so these very talented actors then act out scenes that, you know, sometimes are glaringly biased, and then there's a discussion after the fact. These workshops have been incredibly well received. The discussions that happen after are all rich with insights and real enthusiasm from the audience. And there is some real great learning that is going on. So we're in the process of cascading that to our people. And then we supplement that with something that when I heard it the first time I thought was sort of silly. When we do our performance management, excuse me a second. When we do our performance management, our D&I leader said, we're going to give you a bunch of posters. And I want you to have those posters up when your teams are rating their team members. That will remind them of the training they received on unconscious bias. And so we put them up. I didn't think it would really do anything, but I was in many of those meetings where people did refer to the training, and I think the posters themselves actually did a lot to, you know, make their memory click and remember what they had been taught. When we're done with our performance management, one of the last steps in the process is to cut all the ratings by gender, by level, to make sure that we don't see anything obvious that is wrong. And I'm happy to say that we've been very pleased with what we've seen over the last year or two, and I think this unconscious bias training has gone a long way in making people think differently. One little story, we had a session about 2 years ago, and it was with people who had been with us maybe a year and a half at most. And it was myself and my lead for talent, and they were complaining that the seniors that they reported to were mean, they were rude, they didn't treat them well. And so as we were probing and trying to figure out what exactly was going on, and this was a group of men and women, ultimately they got to the statement of, well, it's not the men who are a problem. 100% of the men seniors aren't a problem, and 100% of the women seniors are a problem. And so for me, that was just such a clear case of bias. These were all people who were new to the firm. I know that if we were to have that same type of intervention with people who had been here longer, who are working for, say, women managers, we wouldn't have that same result. So I think the efforts that we have put forth to, over time teach people to think differently have actually been working. So I'll pause there and take a breath and ask if there's any questions.
Gwen, thank you for sharing. Wonderful success stories. Really appreciate you sharing with us. 60% of women across all the rungs of E&Y ladder, that's phenomenal. I think our biggest differentiators from many. And 90% return rate after maternity. I mean, a big gap from what the literature says, 20%. So tremendous achievements and exactly what all the efforts are paying off. So I have some questions, Gwen, and I would encourage people on the call to also send their questions through the chat button. The first question is really about the business case. You started all these initiatives. What was the reason? Were the women coming to you, or you proactively as an organization wanted to get started there?
Well, I think as a global culture, it is something that we are all invested in. I don't have
Well, I can't hear you. Can you hear me? Hello?
only
Gwen, I'm
about the
sorry.
need
I didn't
for
hear a
us.
thing. There was a technical glitch.
Oh, okay.
Can I request you to repeat, please?
Sure, no problem. What I said is, as a global firm, we are very, very invested in D&I, and in fact, about 2 years ago, our chairman sent out a D&I roadmap to all of the partners and asked all of us to adopt this roadmap. And so, again, tone at the top. It is very clear that D&I is one of the priorities of the firm. If you look at our Vision 2020 document, the highest performing teams is one of the 3 main pillars of that vision, and part of the highest performing teams is having a diverse and inclusive workforce. So right from the beginning, it has been accepted. When I think about, say 20 years ago in the firm, everybody was talking about business case, right? We've stopped because we feel that discussion is really just something that people use more often than not to slow down the progress.
Absolutely.
We have just accepted that this is what we need to do. Let's stop wasting time producing numbers on a business case, and let's just get it done.
And my line is that the business case is the same as it's for men. You hire men, it's the same business case to hire women. So thanks for sharing that. There are some questions that I'm going to take from the audience and then get back to my list. The differences between men and women are not fully understood or valued. what have been some of the initiatives from the D&I perspective that you have embedded into the process?
I don't know that we have something that really calls forth to examine the differences. I think what we focus on is the strengths that we see in the women and are just trying to get them to understand that just because you're different, that doesn't mean better or not. It is just a difference. And, you know, part of the D&I agenda is saying that those differences make us have stronger teams. So all of us have a responsibility to be whatever we are, but to be contributing members of our teams. And that will give us a stronger answer and better client service.
Okay, great. What is the success rate of the sponsorship program?
You know what, I don't have an actual number yet. We rolled it out in about 18 months ago. And generally what we're looking at is people who are trying to get to that next level at whatever is the highest level we have in the group. And so in my practice, we have our sponsorship at the level of getting people to the senior manager level. That is an incredibly hard promotion to qualify for, and we only have a handful of senior managers, so getting some of those high performers from the existing manager pool of people to the next level is what we're looking at. But 18 months isn't enough background. In some of the other practices that are differently staffed than mine, they are looking at getting women to the director level, and they too, as I said, we just started rolling it out 18 months ago. We don't have enough data yet to say if it's successful.
So the program is 18 months long as well?
Well, what we're trying to do is put a date on it. You know, in the U.S., I would tell you they were using 2 years. We have a slightly different career path, and so we're looking at the results and saying, well, should it be 2 years, should it be 3 years? And we haven't really decided yet.
Okay. And the model works, how does sponsorship work? I mean, we all are familiar with the mentoring approach, but in a sponsorship scenario, it's a one-on-one, the sponsor taking you to some meetings. How does it work?
And well, you know, there isn't one answer. So sponsorship is very tailored to the person. I was just talking to someone today who is a sponsor of someone, and it was someone that he worked with, and until he got into this role, he said he was very surprised. He said from afar, he would have thought this individual had absolutely nothing to work on and was, you know, on a guaranteed path to making senior manager. When they had a personal relationship and contact, he saw what we in leadership had seen, that this individual had certain areas that they needed to work on. It wasn't from, you know, a technical nature. She knows her job well. The area she really needs to work on was, frankly, confidence in her own ability, so that she could properly showcase her talent. And so each person has their own needs, and the sponsors that we're picking are our best people, and so they make that assessment and then they work with that person to get them to that next level.
Okay.
But it's more than just development. It's also making sure they are on the right, you know, we're a client service firm. It's very important that you are on the right client assignments, working at the right level, and so they also review that to make sure that they're getting the right opportunities to showcase their talent.
Mm-hmm. So let me go back to the tone at the top question now. You know, you said you got a roadmap, all of you got that. Now, does it come with defined set of roles and responsibilities and accountabilities as well?
Well, that's what was nice about the roadmap. It was a fairly large document, I must say. It took me a couple of different car rides to get through it all. And what it is a menu of items, right? We're all not expected to do 100% of them because we do have to get our work done. But what we were asked to do is read the document, pick one or two things that we thought we could have an impact, and make sure that we actually followed through with it. Then as a practice, what we did is we sat down with the roadmap as a practice and we said there's no way we can get to the end of the road in 1 year. Let us pick our priorities off the roadmap, make progress on those. Year 2, we're going to do the same thing again with the ultimate goal of getting to all the different elements and making sure that we get to the right end together.
Mm-hmm. So it's not part of your performance management goal, is it?
I have to, when I get measured, part of my performance management is my people results. So it depends on what I picked as part of my roadmap, but whatever it is in my goals, and then I do get measured on my overall people scores.
Okay. So one of the questions I just got is, what kind of metrics do you monitor? So what does your D&I scorecard look like?
Well, we actually just started using, and I don't know the name of the tool, but it's something that's on the Catalyst website,
Okay.
which helps us to analyze our gender results. And so it was actually a very nice tool, and you can input your information by, what we used it for was by level, by practice, to say how many people do we have in the beginning of the year, how many people left us who were females, how many were promoted, how many were transferred out for other reasons, and where did you get to at the end of the year. And you know, that doesn't sound like rocket science,
Right.
but it was really great information because you could see very clearly, do I have a problem because all the women are leaving? Do I have a problem because I'm not promoting them? Or do I have a problem because I'm not hiring from, you know, a gender diverse pool?
Mm-hmm.
And so it allowed you within your different sub-practices and in your different levels to say, well, where's my pain point? Because you could just look at the numbers in total and you weren't going to say, well, what's the problem? And so we've just gone through and have been looking at that for all of our practices. You know, back in the old days when we first started looking at gender issues, they always said to us, when you get to 30% women, that's when you don't have to worry, right? That was what the you know, the academic thinking was 20 years ago. And I was saying to our global diversity leader who was here, I said, I have 60% women. I have 60% women at every level. And I still think we have to worry. I still think we have to continue to measure ourselves, see where, you know, problems are going to pop up, and make sure that we get to them early so that they don't become something where all of a sudden I don't have my gender ratios through all my levels.
Okay. So how do men respond to this? Are they, have they bought into it? What do they have to say?
I have to say, tone at the top helps.
Okay. They don't have a
Okay.
choice.
Well, you know, they can voice their concerns. I don't hear a lot of people
Mm-hmm.
giving us a hard time. I really don't.
Okay.
I think most men understand the day a study comes out that says men can't get promoted, that men are not at the highest ranks of every
They can.
organization in the world, that's when we're going to have to take that a little more seriously.
Okay. So we're waiting for the
That being
balance to
said,
tip.
yeah, that being said, you know, I think the efforts to get the men involved in the effort helps also,
Sure.
because then it becomes personal to them that their team members are being successful or not. and I think that brings it home to them.
Okay. I got a question on the maternity program you have. You talked about counseling. Is it one session wherein you have a group counseling, or how does it work?
It's a multi-day session. They're also given my favorite book for maternity, What to Expect When You're Expecting. And I believe, and I should have known this, but I don't, I think there are touch points after the fact,
Okay.
including HR touch points for when they're on maternity and, you know, thinking about coming back. Other thing we did in maternity, and I forgot to mention this, which I also like, it used to be that we treated maternity like the big secret. You know, we knew women were going to go on maternity leave. We knew they might want more than the paid leave that we were going to give them, and we have opportunities for them to have additional leave without pay and sabbaticals and things like that. But before they left us, no one had that conversation. And so we were planning on them coming back on a certain date. They were sitting at home fretting because they really didn't want to come back yet. And we made it a very difficult situation for everyone because we expected them back and they didn't show. And they were afraid to say something. Now what we do is we have a very honest and proactive conversation in the beginning to say, here's all your options, right? We don't care. We just want to know what you're going to do. We are not going to hold any of it against you. Tell us what you need. We'll meet those needs, and then we will know when you're coming back. And that has been very, very helpful and well received.
So a lot of openness and transparency.
Yeah.
So a follow-up question to that, when women return from maternity leave, what kind of growth opportunities did they receive? Did the organization lay more emphasis on developing and reskilling them?
Well, most women, you know, we find leave anywhere from, you know, say 6 to 9 months, and then they want to come back, mostly, I'm sure, for financial reasons, right? And so in that time period, they really haven't lost much. If they need some additional training, we have training going on all the time, and they can do whatever they need. If somebody leaves us for a number of years, then we work with them on their re-entry. We get them additional training, because if you haven't been doing tax work for, say, 2-3 years, you do need to brush up. But since we are such a large organization, we have a full calendar of learning that they can avail themselves to. We really encourage them to do more learning rather than less. Even if they wanted to go back through the entry program, we would be more than happy for them to do that, because that will get them back and in a successful mode easier. So
Okay,
we're lucky to have a lot.
Sure, it sounds like. Have you experienced some women taking advantages of these benefits?
We see, you know, most people embracing it and then really appreciating it. So I think it has been very, very well received. And we see that our men too, we do have paternity leave for the husbands. It's not, you know, 6 weeks, but we do see our men taking advantage of it, and there's really no problem.
Okay.
Because we have a heavily female population, they feel more comfortable, I guess.
Okay. Jumping back to the sponsorship program, I got a question that since it focuses only on women and their development, is it treated as a positive discrimination at any point?
We haven't had anybody giving us any feedback like that.
Not so far.
People, yeah, no. I think DNA is part of the culture, and so you don't see people having a problem with these programs.
And related to the same program, you said it's for your high potential women. The question is, what about the not so high potential? How do you inspire them and keep them engaged and motivated? How do you make sure that your efforts are translated into significant value at all hierarchy levels?
Well, you know, we have a lot of effort around people and their development and getting people to really take their role seriously. And so, you know, because we've only been in operation for 14 years and because most of our people get hired off campus, we are just at the point where we're getting a team of senior managers. So that role is new and they don't have many role models. Our D&I leader about, say, 9 months ago did a survey of our managers and the women managers and said, just a simple question, do you want to be a senior manager?
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's more responsibility and it's pretty challenging, I would say. And we were really thrilled to see that the vast majority of the women said yes.
Mm-hmm.
So in our overall people culture, in our efforts to instill the values of the firm and the focus on providing exceptional client service, the message is resonating with people and they are trying to get to those next levels. So
Okay.
we do
Yeah.
have the support of the whole culture.
Yeah, it looks like that. Because to get to a 60%, it's not easy. And unless and until the entire organization is working simultaneously towards that, not going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So another question that came across was, how about your competitors? Do you think it's your industry that is attracting a lot of women, or it's just E&Y that's ahead in the game?
I think the professional services firms, all of us, especially in the areas of tax and assurance, have a lot of women who are entering those types of careers. If you look at the graduates in BCom here, in accounting in the U.S., and frankly in accounting anywhere in the world, there are many, many women candidates
Mm-hmm.
in the universities and colleges, so it is a little bit easier for us. It's not like the engineering world where the student population is not as rich. Now, part of it is because I think the industry itself identified gender as an issue early on. When I was in school a long time ago, there weren't women. It wasn't 50% women like it is today. But I think the professions identified this as an issue early on and then courted the women to enter the student market. So.
Okay. All right. Now, could you help describe, in terms of the organizational setup or the governance, how does it structure within your practice? So you oversee, are you the chairperson for your D&I council, or?
I'm not the chair of the D&I council. I'm one of the members, and I think there's about 10 of us. And it's all the different subservice line leaders. So we have, different verticals within our organization. So all of the leaders of the different service lines are chairing it together.
Okay. And you have enough resources? You have a dedicated team that works on D&I, or no?
No, we do not have enough resources. Absolutely not.
Okay, but
And so that's why we as the service line leaders all have to be involved and then get our people who are not dedicated to this topic but still take part in the effort together. So it is definitely a team, but it is by no account a full-time team dedicated to this.
But you have a leader, a team lead who just focuses on D&I?
Yes, we have really one person who is full-time devoted to it for a very large organization.
Okay. So another question is, besides all these good policies, what challenges do you face? Every new initiative comes with its own set of challenges, either pre or post. So any challenges you would want to share with us?
Sure. I think for our new joiners, you know, the people off campus, we face the same challenge we face anywhere in the world, and that's that they don't understand that they need to get involved in this and think it through for themselves because they believe they're invincible, they believe they will never be challenged, and they just don't know what the future ahead is, and so they don't really pay attention. It's only when they are right in the middle of a personal crisis that they finally understand that these things are important.
Mm-hmm.
So for our younger people, getting their hearts and minds uh, into the topic is our first challenge. For our more senior women, it's supporting them here, as I said, getting people to share and talk and learn from each other rather than just keeping it a secret
Mm-hmm.
is something that I think is a challenge for us because they come up with the best solutions, but it's not as valuable if you don't share it with everyone else.
Sure, sure. So just one more question, Gwen, that has came up. It's regarding the flexible policy. Did because of the implementation of the same, did your people miss deadlines, or do you see low productivity at any point? No.
No,
Okay.
we did not. We have had no adverse effect of doing this. And some of my, my subservice line leaders within tax were very uncomfortable with this idea,
Mm-hmm.
right? They were used to this system that was very strict and they were comfortable with it. And we really challenged them to get out of their comfort zone, loosen up a bit, and trust their teams. And we really have not had a problem.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Now,
do think that people are happier.
yeah, I can imagine that. Now, flexible policy is for available for everybody, or it's just for some business functions. How does it pan out?
It, I, I only run the tax practice, and so these are the policies that the flexible timing policy was something that I instituted for tax. We then share that with the other subservice lines. I assume a lot of them have done it, but honestly, I haven't followed
Okay.
up. Yeah.
But there's never a challenge in kind of assessing who gets to avail it and who doesn't. Do you draw a line
No.
there, or it's an open entitlement for everybody?
It's really open for all, but it's the teams themselves that make the decision. If someone feels they're poorly treated in that decision, they have, skip level people that they can go to, but it has
Okay.
not really been a real issue. We
Okay.
do make clear to the most junior people that they have the least amount of flexibility.
Okay.
The less you know about your job, the less you are able to work without the guidance of someone else. And so when we announced it, we did say to the more junior people, do expect that you will be somewhat having to follow your team until you have the skills to work on your own.
Okay. And do you equip everybody's home with broadband and things like that, or it's on themselves?
No, we don't. As I said, we have found that broadband does not generally have enough strength to support our technology for our work, and so we don't support it at all. We test it periodically, but at this point we still are not satisfied.
Okay. Okay. The question on unconscious bias, is that training given to all your employees or just your leaders?
Right now, the first wave was the leaders,
Okay.
so senior managers and up. We're now planning out the wave two. We're in what we call one of our tax busy seasons right now, so we don't do any training at this point in the year. But once we come out again, which is usually in October, we will cascade it down to the next level, and I'm hoping I have a 2-year full cascade to get all 4,000 people.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Okay. Now the future. I mean, we know great results, great efforts as of now, but what kind of challenges do you see in future?
Well, as I said, I don't feel complacent about maintaining the results. We have to continue to monitor and assess and figure out where we have pockets that are a problem. Of my team, when we did our last analysis, that Catalyst tool that I talked about, we did find a practice which had a hidden problem, right? You couldn't tell when you looked at all the big numbers that in one particular practice they were slipping. So we'll continue to work to fix anything like that we find. We have to then, once we have a good population of senior managers, we're going to have to go up to the next level. How do we get a good population of directors? And so we know that is on our agenda. And then we are also doing succession planning for all of our leadership positions. And in that too, we will consider gender as we look at our high potential people to fill those positions. So those are the things we're going to be focusing on in the next year or so to maintain what we've gotten.
Do you set any targets when you say you're looking for succession planning for senior leadership positions? Are there any targets set?
So the way we look at targets has evolved over the years. In the old days, we used to give leaders, a number, a percentage, or whatnot, and oftentimes they would look around and say, "Well, I have no idea how I'm going to do that," right?
Mm-hmm.
Now what we do is we say we want to make sure that all of our promotion decisions are representative of the population who's eligible. So if you're looking at promotions to senior manager and your managers are 60% women, you should expect that 60% of your promotions are women, so that even if you don't have 60% women in senior manager, you should be promoting based on the relative pool below.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. The
And
pipeline.
you can have that analysis at every single level, and that gives people challenging goals that ultimately will get you to the point where your top levels and your bottom levels are all the same. So not giving someone an arbitrary goal, but saying to them, we expect the relative promotions to agree to the pool below is how we do a lot of our goaling.
So as an example, tangible example, if we have about 20% women in the pipeline, we expect that the promotions would go to at least 20% up there. Right. So you can't set a target of 50%, but set a target of 20%.
Exactly. Because
Okay.
we used to set the target at 50, but they may not even have had enough people below to make that target.
Yes, the pipeline is important.
Yeah, now making that target more close to reality, that makes your leaders buy in better.
Mm-hmm. But that means even at the very entry level, the entry of the pipeline, the numbers need to be decent enough so you can see a progression happening. Because some companies can say, I just don't have a pipeline, so I'm not going to do anything about it.
Well, and even I've thought about that before. We're lucky, right? We have a good pool of people from university and college that allows us to have good numbers from the day one. Well, part of that is also, though, because we used to only hire one type of degree. We used to hire exclusively BCom, and our numbers weren't as good. But we sat back and we said, do we actually need only that degree, right? Are there opportunities for other smart analytical thinkers? Because the vast majority of what we do here, we teach. We're doing tax work. And the Indian university system is not going to teach someone U.S. taxation or UK taxation, right? We teach them. So what we really need is smart analytical thinkers, and that allowed us to open up our pool to not only BCom, which still had a lot of women, but also math and science, which also has a lot of women.
Mm-hmm.
And so anyone who says, well, I don't have a good pool, I would challenge them to say, have you assessed if the pool you're looking at is the only pool you have available?
Mm-hmm. Now, a company like Caterpillar or manufacturing companies in general, they have a challenge because they hire primarily mechanical engineers, and there are not too many women out there graduating with those qualifications. Any insights for them?
Well, I'll share something we did in the U.S. In the United States, there's a lot of women who are graduating with the degrees we hire from. There are not a lot of minorities, though. It's a fairly, Caucasian population, and we felt like we needed to do something about our minority population. And so what we did is we developed a program where we went into the schools early on, and we picked top minority students who weren't necessarily going to go down the right degree path that would lead them to a career in tax. And we invited them to a program that we called Discover Tax.
Mm-hmm.
And from all over the country, we flew them into New York. We had a 3-day session with them where we showed them the potential of having a career in tax. Then we also offered them internships a year earlier than they would be normally offered an internship to work with our tax practices around the country. And we had a phenomenal result of and I don't have the exact percentages because it was a while back when I was involved. We still do it today, of people from that pool changing their majors and becoming the right majors to become tax professionals, and then ultimately getting a job with us. And so, yes, I agree. There aren't that many people who are in those programs today, but there's things you can do
Mm-hmm.
to get them. I will tell you, one of my 2 daughters graduated with an engineering degree,
Mm-hmm.
and I know for a fact that women make great engineers.
Yes,
So.
absolutely. No, very well said. That example is very, very relevant. It might not be the easiest path, like going to campus and hiring the talent, but really start thinking proactively and sowing the seeds for
Mm-hmm.
the future. And
Yep.
yes, the returns could be a little far-fetched, but certainly doable. So yes, Caterpillar does that in the US, and those are some of the practices we can certainly implement in our neck of woods as well.
Mm-hmm.
Fantastic. We are almost close to the time where we are. So just last call for anybody who has questions. Please send me. Otherwise, we will adjourn the meeting. Okay, I don't see anybody raising their hands, Gwen. So fantastic,
Can I,
great. Yeah,
Auntie, can I ask a very quick question to Gwen?
sure, go ahead.
So Gwen, what challenges did you face in the past when you were trying to do all these good things in D&I and raising the bar for women? I'm sure it wasn't a very smooth sailing or whatever you thought that you can do and you could do easily. Did you face some challenges?
Well, this is going to sound a little unbelievable, but there really wasn't. I had initially to be pulled into the effort. When I was younger, like the young people today, I didn't think there was a problem, right? And I will say, as a woman in the U.S. practice, through senior manager, I really didn't have real problems. And so it was that same managing partner who told me to take that flexible work arrangement and supported it, who said to me and my friends, we'd love you to start a professional women's effort. And we didn't want to at first. And they really pushed us, and we said, okay, we'll do it. And it was only when we got involved that we then realized that there was a need for it. And so again, the tone at the top made it very easy for us to move forward. And it wasn't just my managing partner, it was our chairman in the United States back then who truly believed that this was, he believed all those calculations about the business case. He was an early adopter, and so it wasn't that hard to push these efforts forward.
Yeah.
That's
Often,
encouraging. Thank
yeah,
you.
but oftentimes when a woman is kind of pushing the envelope forward, it's not looked upon as a strong case. They say, oh, here she comes again to talk about it, versus a man pushing the envelope forward.
Yeah, and so that's, we found that here. That's why we got to our CEO and asked him to be our diversity leader. So we had, again, the tone at the top. Sometimes the tone at the top is the man's idea, and sometimes it's the woman's idea, but as long as we get that face in front of people, we seem to be more successful.
So is your CEO the sponsor for just the India DNI, or is he across the board?
Well, his responsibilities are for the multi-locations, but the vast majority of our people are within India, so I will admit that the vast majority of our efforts are taking place here. We have our smaller operations in the other countries, and so there we're relying on our location leaders more than him.
Okay, but you got the best, looks like.
Yes.
Great. Well, this is a good takeaway for me. So it's putting some thoughts in my head what I could do for Caterpillar. So Gwen, thank you so much for giving your time, and not just today, but you have given your time in testing whether we can work it out or not, and for the last 2 years. So truly, truly appreciate it, and hope to stay connected and have you again over Chai Pay maybe in the near future.
Excellent. Thank you so much for asking to have me.
Thank you. And all the attendees, thank you for your time. You all have a great weekend. See you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.